Hi, I am a new minted pensioner and author, documenting my quest to be published. My name is John Nixon, but by the end of this video, it might be something else entirely.
I suppose there are many reasons why an author might want to use a pen name. I think of Eric Arthur Blair, who, to protect his genteel and lower upper middle class family, he changed his name to George Orwell. And then there's Mary Ann Evans, who took the name George Eliot, in part to avoid the stigma of being thought a lady novelist. Then in more recent years, there's Doris Lessing, who chose, I think, to write two of her novels under the pseudonym of Jane Summers. As I understand it, she wanted to see whether she could get past the gatekeepers and achieve publication without using the name Doris Lessing, which had become so famous and which assured her of publication. As Jane Summers, she was turned down by Doris Lessing's own publisher, but she was accepted elsewhere. There's also a reason to use a pen name in order to avoid confusing your readers when you switch genre. There's a famous example. Ian Banks wrote as Ian M. Banks when he was writing science fiction. My reason for wanting to change my name doesn't really correspond to any of these. It's more along the lines of the reason so many actors have stage names rather than their own real name, to avoid confusion in a crowded marketplace. You may know that both the British Actors Union Equity and the American Actors Union, the Screen Actors Guild, require their members to have a name that is not shared with any other actor. It's the reason, for example, that David Tennant is called David Tennant and not David MacDonald, which was his original name. When he was quite young and he was ambitious to be an actor, he learned there was another actor in Britain called David MacDonald, so he looked around to change his name and he took the family name of Neil Tennant, who was one of the Pet Shop Boys. The rest is history. Actually, it's not. There's a long story about it which you can find online, where David Tennant explains various other problems that arose with his name. But that's another story. My given name is John Dudley Nixon. I am named after my father and after my father's eldest brother. Okay, so John is the name of my father's eldest brother. He died as a prisoner of war in Malaysia at the end of the Second World War. And Dudley is my father's first name. It was my mother who chose both names, and I am pretty sure she did so because she wanted my father to like me, and she missed the mark quite dramatically with those names. My dad never liked his own name, and I don't think he had a particularly good relationship with his elder brother, who was the apple of my grandfather's eye. I think my grandfather liked that I was called John. Personally, now, I like the name John. I've used it for 65 years, and I don't see any particular reason to change. But John Nixon as an author's name is a problem. I chose to open this YouTube channel, and I also opened a Facebook channel, a professional authors Facebook channel, and I called them both John Nixon Author. But a new search online turns up a whole bunch of authors called John Nixon. There is a chap in England who is, I think, a military historian, military historian, who published his books as John Nixon. And he even has the name John Nixon Author as his domain name on his website. In the USA, there is at least one man called John Nixon, one writer. He used to work as an analyst for the CIA, and if you search for John Nixon online, he is likely to be the first name that comes up. And then on Goodreads, there is at least one other author called John Nixon. His books on Goodreads are mixed in with all the books by the other two John Nixons, although he seems to be rather more prolific. It could be that the former CIA agent or the military historian is writing cozy detective stories on the side, but I kind of doubt that. So there is a third John Nixon somewhere out there also writing. Given the potential confusion, I decided I really ought to change my name, or at least I shouldn't use John Nixon as my published author name. I considered simply using my initials. John D. Nixon, though, didn't feel sufficiently different. There's still a lot of John and still a lot of Nixon there. So then I thought I could use both my initials, J.D. Nixon. I did another internet search on that, and it turns out there is an Australian woman writer called J.D. Nixon. I didn't want to give up on my first name, and I didn't want to invent something completely out of the blue. So I thought, what about using my middle name? Now, as I said, my dad never liked his name. I never liked it very much either. Dudley gets shortened in English to dud, and a dud is something which doesn't work. It's a failure. Not a good name, really. But recently, and it's happened twice, I have been congratulated by complete strangers on my middle name. Young women, possibly on the lookout for potential baby names? I don't really know, I'm speculating, but once at the police station when I was renewing my passport, and once at my health clinic when a student doctor saw my name written on a form. Both times, the young women said they really liked the name Dudley. Fashions change. So I thought maybe I could get some use out of it. Again, I went looking. There were two John Dudleys in the 1500s, dukes and earls. Maybe they were writers, but more likely people who got written about. Anyway, there's nobody around at the moment, as far as I can see, who is called John Dudley and who publishes as an author. So I'm going to take that name. I am going to become John Dudley, author. I'm going to become that on YouTube. I'm going to become that on Facebook if I can. I'm not entirely sure how to change things on Facebook, but I know I can do it on YouTube. And I am going to use John Dudley as my pen name when I publish books. I'm still not really sure how it works for a science fiction author, but I might do what Ian Banks did and slip in an initial. How about N? I could call myself John N. Dudley, science fiction author. Anyway, that's the story of how I found my new pen name. What do you think? There's also a reason to use a pen. To use a pen in order to There's also, and he used to work as an analyst. Try again.